Now, there's a lot of funny sort of names and words we use, not so much used today. I mean, there's spatterdabs. It's a small dab. I don't know why they call them spatterdabs. The only thing I can think is when they're on the deck, they flick around and flick sand in your eyes. That's the only reason I could think they could be called spatterdabs. There's fryers. Fryer is a small place. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You can fry those whole, just cut the heads and tails off and fry them in a frying pan. There's all sorts of names that we use in general talk. You've heard me speak like it. Chavies, jooks. Chavies are children, jooks are dogs. But some of this language is a little bit mixed up with Romany language. We tend to use that sort of language. It's not used so much today. There were funny little sort of sayings like a tarpaulin muster. That was something I often remember. It was in the old days when there wasn't much money about and the weather was bad. And the guys used to say, well, we'll have a tarpaulin muster. That meant they'd get a tarpaulin out and they'd all empty their pockets. And whatever there was there, they'd go up the pub with, and that was a tarpaulin muster. If there was enough there to buy 2 pints and there was only 4 of them, they had to have half each or something. But that's a tarpaulin muster. Oh, Easterly wind in the bread locker. Yeah, that's another story, yarn you've heard me say. Well, that is because easterly wind is thought to be, well, we've always known it as being called a starvation wind, because there may be a lovely lot of fish being caught and the wind will change to the easterly direction and that fish will dry up overnight for no reason. Nobody knows. Maybe it's one for the scientists to answer, but I don't think they even know. And so we used to say easterly wind in the bread locker, young, and that meant the bread locker was down below where the bread was kept, and if that was empty, easterly wind in the bread locker, that's all there was in there, nothing. So that was another saying that I used to hear a lot about years ago. There's quite a lot of fishermen, not so much today, but certainly years ago, that had nicknames, and there were 1 or 2 fishermen that I only knew by their nicknames and I never ever knew their other names. And there were some quite funny nicknames and I have no explanation for them. There was a man called Pungus, which was my wife's uncle. His actual name was Benny. I don't know why he was called Pungus. Frowsy was an old fisherman. Gammy was another old fisherman's name. I don't know if this is true, but Gammy is also a name for being sick. And I'm not sure whether this is true, but I have heard that every time Gammy went to sea, he was seasick. So it is quite possible that he got that name from being seasick. Quite a lot of fishermen are seasick, believe it or not. They have to overcome it. It's a horrible thing. Something I haven't never suffered from, but I certainly suffer from travel sickness in a bus, so I can imagine what it's like. Really, that's about it from me, I think. I could tell you a little bit about those tall buildings on the beach. They are actually called net shops. What they were used for in the old days, because the nets were then all made of cotton or hemp, and there was always different nets for different times of the year. For instance, herring nets would be used probably only 6 weeks of the year. So when they were finished, which would be in about just before Christmas, they would be dried up and hung up in those sheds, and then possibly sprat nets would come out. And they'd be used maybe up till February, and they would be dried and put in there. Then trammel nets would come out, and that's how they were used, pretty literally for storing, keeping the nets and the ropes dry. Today, they're not used. Nearly all of the nets are made of nylon. So if you go down to the fishing beach today, you'll see many piles and piles of nets all over the place. But they're all there and they're all used at certain times of the year. So the net shops are really not used much now. I understand they're pretty unique to Hastings. Some of them are 4 stories high, and also some of them have cellars. most of them now, I think, well, I think they're all under preservation orders now, and they're looked after by the town. They're a terrific tourist attraction. All the time when I'm working along with my missus doing our fish rolls by the half boat at the museum, all day long people are asking me what they're used for and why are they tall. Now the story, I understand why they're tall. Again, it's a story I've heard all my life, is because in the old days they had to pay a ground rent. So instead of having a shed 30 foot long by 6 foot wide and paying that amount of ground rent, they built them 30 foot high, and they only stood on small bits of ground, so the rent was cheaper. Now that is the story I was told. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's certainly a good argument. It could be. The other thing that has altered, the boats have always been pulled up on the beach. Now, in the very old days, they were pulled up by horses. There were about 4 wooden capstans. One today you can still see in the museum in Hastings. And a horse, there was a big pole put in it, you'll see it if you ever go to the Fisherman's Museum, and a horse would walk round and round and pull the boat up. Now that capstan was used probably to pull 3 or 4 boats up in that little area. There was about half a dozen, if I remember, 4 or 5 of these on the beach. Now they've gone, and each boat has got its own winch, which is run by a diesel engine. And of course the last big change was the boats themselves. For hundreds and hundreds of years boats have been built the same out of wood. They look like barrels, terrific sea boats, floated in a cup full of water. Really good boats, but like everything, progress. About 25 years ago the first iron one arrived. I couldn't see it working at all, but how wrong could I be, because there's some beautiful iron boats on there now. But in course, the fact that they're iron, they're very, very heavy. So no longer are they pushed in and out by hand. They now need tractors to move them about. So that's probably the biggest change in my lifetime on the beach.